What if the Great Pyramids weren't the starting line of civilization, but the leftovers of a world that was judged? Not evidence of ancient aliens or Anunnaki, but evidence that the first technology boom happened before the flood. If you love fringe topics like this but want a great source that can properly connect all the dots for you, make sure to like, follow, and share because you definitely haven't heard all these dots connected like this before.
If he were telling the truth, he wouldn't have told us.
Unless, of course, he knew you wouldn't believe the truth, even if he told us.
Today, I'm going to walk you through 9 links in one chain from Genesis and Enoch to granite and quartz. So tight that by the end, you'll see the picture. Dot 1. Discontinuity. The Great Pyramid of Giza sits in a class of its own. Scale, precision, geometry. Then later pyramids look simpler. It's the same pattern you see at Sacsayhuaman in Peru, megalithic base stones that look superhuman, with later smaller stones stacked on top. Conclusion? Later builders often inherited something they didn't fully understand. They copied. They didn't create. In other words, the Egyptians didn't build the Great Pyramids. They just found them and tried to replicate them. Dot 2. Who built the first layer? Genesis 6 and Enoch 1 speak of the Watchers, heavenly beings who fell and their offspring, the Nephilim giants who dominated the earth. If anyone could move megaliths, align them to the heavens, and embed physics into stone, it was the generation corrupted by forbidden knowledge, the pre-flood technologists. Egypt has a well-documented history of giants in their own mythology, and pharaohs like Ramses II were depicted as towering over his subjects, just like Gilgamesh. And if that wasn't enough, Pharaoh Akhenaten's DNA was intentionally mutated and was found to have 2 times the cranial capacity and a much denser bone structure. In other words, he wasn't fully human. He was genetically corrupted, just as the Nephilim. This would further attest to the idea that giants were worshipped as gods in ancient times. Dot 3. The environment. Many have proposed the pre-flood world was different. More pressure, more water, and a water canopy above. Here's the intriguing piece. Under extreme pressure, hydrogen becomes reflective, a mirror-like metallic state. Imagine the ancient sky with a high-pressure, high-reflectivity barrier, less radiation, different climate, and a world where light is managed at scale. This is a conceptual bridge to what we see on the ground. This water canopy possessed reflective properties that ultimately protected the earth and allowed everything to not only grow larger but live longer as well. This is why God said after the flood that he would limit the years of man to 120 years. It wasn't just some arbitrary punishment, it was the real consequences of losing this protective barrier surrounding the earth. But when you think about the reflective properties of highly pressurized hydrogen, it really reminds me of the once reflective properties of the Great Pyramids themselves. Dot 4. The Great Pyramids' original Tiro limestone casing was highly polished, a sun-bright mirror. Add a possibly gilded capstone and you have a celestial reflector. Why does that matter? Because shiny geometry isn't just pretty, it's functional. A reflective pyramid can concentrate sunlight like a vast solar thermal array, modulate electromagnetic fields by shape and orientation, and drive acoustic EM resonance in the granite cores. And granite is loaded with quartz, which is a piezoelectric. Translation: sunlight, resonance, pressure equals usable effects. Not necessarily electricity like a modern outlet, but energy manipulation all the same. In March of this year, synthetic aperture radar SAR scans were done under the Giza pyramids, and they discovered an extensive subterranean city of shafts and colossal pillars. They say these findings are unconfirmed by the scientific community, but if you consider that those pillars could have served as some sort of capacitor for all the energy from the sun, it would make you reconsider the purpose of these marvels of the world. To think these massive mysteries were used for glorified tombs of the pharaohs becomes more far-fetched, don't you think? Dot 5. Geology. The Giza Plateau sits over water channels and conductive substrata. Water moves, stone vibrates, quartz responds. Run sunlight and cosmic timing through a reflective, precisely angled geometry, and you get a giant tuned cavity, a machine that couples sky, stone, and ground. Think waveguide. Think resonant chamber. Temple on the outside, technology on the inside. Dot 6. After the flood, Jubilees tells us Cainum, a descendant of Shem, found writings left by the Watchers, kept them, copied them, and sinned owing to them. That's the moment forbidden know-how re-enters the human story. And when you mix textbooks plus ruins, you get a civilization that looks genius because it piggybacks on pre-flood tech. Knowledge is power, and power is wielded to maintain control and dominance. The Egyptian royalty had this advantage and is also much of why historians all document the sorcery and magic that came out of Egypt. Egypt used the forbidden knowledge left behind by the Watchers to establish dominance over mankind. 7. Egypt. Not a single bloodline, but a hybrid of families and tribes after the flood. Shem's line interacting and intermarrying with Japheth's line, settling a land already scattered with megalithic clues. They inherit forms and formulas. Priests curate timing. Builders preserve alignments. Rulers wrap it all in myth. And the center of their public worship, the sun. But what is interesting about this point is also going to piss off a lot of black people that want to take credit for the Egyptian empire. I hear so many black people trying to say Egypt was a black nation, and that's half right. The peoples were of Ham, so yes, they were black. But just as scripture says, he would serve his brothers Shem and Japheth. The Egyptian royalty were white with red hair according to the pharaoh's mummified bodies. In other words, Ham served Shem and Japheth, just as scripture said. The black Egyptians were ruled by white pharaohs. So, sorry to burst your bubble, my African brothers, but Egyptian royalty wasn't Black Panther from Wakanda.
Wakanda forever!
8. If your crown jewel is a solar reactive machine, what do you elevate? The source that powers it. So Ra isn't just a symbol of warmth. He's the engine behind your city of light, ruled by the light bearer, Lucifer. Your calendar, your planting, your prestige, your military timing, your signs in the sky. Technology becomes liturgy. Liturgy becomes theology. And when you consider all the technological implications of the pyramids and how it replicated the reflective properties of the water canopy above, it is clear that the architects of the Great Pyramids were synergizing off the already existing benefits of the mirror in the sky. The question then becomes, what exactly was this pyramid capable of doing when both the canopy and its reflective properties synergize with the reflective properties on the pyramid? The technological implications must have been far greater before the flood than after, is what I'm saying. And 9. The misdiagnosis. Modern voices see the anomaly and shout, "Ancient aliens!" But the older testimony, Genesis, Enoch, Jubilees, says Watchers taught forbidden arts, Nephilim built and ruled, and survivors remembered them as gods. Look at Gilgamesh, the giant king of Mesopotamia, half myth, half man, fully venerated. Not E.T., N.T., Nephilim tradition. I'm not saying I don't believe in aliens. I'm just saying that if you're going to play in the fringe, at least evaluate everything in the proper context. Now, skeptics say tombs, not tech, and fundamentalist Christians say, don't touch Enoch or Jubilees, but here's the problem. The stones are still there. The alignments still work. The discontinuity still gapes. You can reject aliens without rejecting anomalies, and you can prefer scripture while letting Enoch and Jubilees provide context. Never above the Bible, but under it, pointing back to it. But on both ends, these explanations are completely insufficient to explain what's already there. It makes no sense for the Egyptians to build such great structures that we can't even reproduce today just so they can shove dead bodies in there. And if you take the fundamentalist Christian approach and rule out giants, then how exactly did Egypt become a power that God would use as an example to humble later on in the timeline? Think about it. So here's the whole chain in one breath. Pre-flood watchers, Nephilim builders, reflective high-tech geometry, flood, ruins remain, post-flood rediscovery, Canaan, Egypt inherits forms and formulas, sun god worship because the machine runs on light. Modern confusion says aliens when the Bible already named the culprits. And spiritually, this is the counterfeit. Heaven's throne is described as crystal, burnished, blazing light reflecting God's glory. The counterfeit takes that reflectivity, wraps it in stone, and points it to creation, the sun, the stars, the kings, instead of the creator. Why does this matter now? Because people are hungry for meaning. They see the puzzle pieces. Rogan talks of anomalies. Influencers sell aliens. Academics shrug. But the truth ties the pieces together. The oldest story explains the strangest stones. Not extraterrestrial, ex-celestial, fallen ones and their giant sons. So if this video helped you connect some more dots that you might have missed, please don't forget to like, share, and follow for more. And remember, the God who judged the first tech age also sent mercy in Jesus Christ. Where counterfeit light deceives, he is the true light who saves. Return to him. But until next time, the Faceless Prophet out.
If he were telling the truth, he wouldn't have told us.
Unless, of course, he knew you wouldn't believe the truth, even if he told it to you.